Good morning, beloved. Peace be with you. Our psalm today is from Psalm 81, and we'll be connecting it to our first reading, which is already in Numbers. We had a whole 2 days of Leviticus and passed that one up real quick, So here we're in Numbers, and back to complaining, basically, So the children of Israel, they got rescued from Egypt, crossed the Red Sea toward Mount Sinai, where they're going to get those 10 commandments and enter into covenant with God. And on the way there, they were complaining. And now they've gone through the whole golden calf and got the 10 commandments and renewed their covenant with God. And now they've left there on their way to the promised land, and they're back to complaining again. Old habits die hard, So anyways, that's the basic context for that first reading. But our psalm, if we were here Friday, should sound familiar because that refrain is the same refrain. Sing with joy to God our help. Different situation in the first reading, but same response that we have to the first reading. Sing with joy to God our help. Let's just step through the psalm a little bit. Hopefully some of this is helping you to see how closely tied the psalms are to the first reading, and how especially these historical narrative psalms, how closely they actually help Israel via song recall their past and how God is their help. And so this is why sometimes we see in the psalm, we see God's steadiness, his consistency, his faithfulness, and even throughout Israel's unfaithfulness. And this is one of the points that is always drawn out. So we repeated the refrain, sing with joy to God our help. Again, as we're repeating the refrain, we're repeating it so it becomes flesh in our lives. So we remember, we need to sing with joy to God our help. In the good times and the bad times, and the ups and the downs. When we're hungry, when we're not hungry, Sing with joy to God our help. Now that would be a good reminder for Israel right now, right? As they're complaining to God and forgetting that he is their help, and they definitely have no joy, and they're lamenting about that. Okay, so the psalm steps through here, and this should sound really close to our first reading. My people heard not my voice, and Israel obeyed me not. So I gave them up to the hardness of their hearts, and they walked according to their own counsels, their own ideas. If only my people would hear my voice. Like hear, meaning listen and obey, right? The word hear, to hear, always means to listen and obey. If only they would listen and obey my voice. And if only they would walk in my ways. Quickly, I would humble their enemies against their foes. I would turn my hand against their foes. In other words, I would be their help. If only they would just listen to me. Help me, help you, Help me, help you, to help me, to help you. This is what God's saying to them, Listen to listen to this first stanza again, though. My people heard not my voice. They did not listen, and they did not obey my voice. So, what did God do? Spank them, smack them down, beat them with the rod. This is the punishment that God gave them, and that he gives to us when we don't listen. I gave them up to the hardness of their hearts. What did God do? Fine, try it your way. That's what he did. Yeah, we have to understand, this is very important to understand. We have talked about this way in the past, but this is how the church teaches. It's foundational from St. Thomas Aquinas. He really spells this out, God's punishment. God's punishment when we sin is simply to let us deal with the consequences of our sin. You did those actions. This is, You didn't know what you were doing, but this is what happens because you did that. You know? You curse somebody out, guess what? They're not going to be friends with you anymore. God didn't punish them by breaking up the friendship. He just spoke out loud and just said, this is what happens when you do that. You know? When you, and so this is what he's saying. They would not obey me, so I gave them up to the hardness of their hearts. Fine, do it your way. I've been trying to help you and trying to help you do it a better way, a way that's going to bring you life, and you won't listen, so go do it your way then. Any moms and dads out there had to say that before? Fine, I'll be here to pick up the pieces when you're ready, you know. And if you're been around long enough as a mom and dad where your kids had their kids and they came back and probably said to you, oh, Mom, you were right. Dad, you were right when this was going on, you know. I didn't get it. And he said, no, you didn't get it. And there always comes a time when all you can do, this is words from my own father, all you can do is love them and pray for them. I love you, I pray for you. There's nothing I can't help you with when you're doing that. When you're ready to change, when you're ready to stop, get over here and I'll help you with all that I got. But for right now, if you just want to do it your way, I love you and I'll pray for you, you know? And God, that's how God is. This is what he's doing. I gave them up to the hardness of their hearts. This is Israel in the first reading. 100%. Grumbling, complaining. Okay. God doesn't leave them. He doesn't abandon them. He's still there to be their help. He's still there to fill them with joy. He's just waiting for them to turn their attention, to turn their hearts back to him. This is amazing. Shows us God's character. This is who God is. He's amazing. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't hold grudges. Okay. I'll wait for you. He definitely waited a long time, but got impatient with us and decided to stop waiting for us to come back to him, and he came to us as a man in Jesus. And this is how the psalm goes from the first reading, points us to the gospel. We see God in the flesh coming to us to be our help. Two totally different attitudes of these two different crowds, huh? The first crowd, grumbling, complaining, and what did they get of that? All they did was wear out poor Moses, to where he said, Lord, just take me now. I can't handle it, you know. Grumbling and complaining is one of the worst things for an atmosphere, an environment, a group. It's just toxic no matter what. Even when you're complaining about something that's true, all it does is increase toxicity and poison in an atmosphere, in a group. Bishop Barron had a good, quick one-liner almost. He said, don't complain unless you're willing to help. And if you want to complain, then complain to the degree you're willing to help. So if you're willing to help a lot, I guess you could complain a lot because you're going to help with the solution. But if you're only willing to help a little bit, then you can only complain a little bit. In our first reading, we have God in the flesh in Jesus being their help. And again, as we slow this down, we see the character of God, of who our God is. His character, his qualities, how wonderful he is. Here is Jesus. He hears of the death of John the Baptist, who was his friend and his cousin. And he withdraws in a boat to a deserted place by himself. What's he want to do? Grieve, cry, mourn. He gets out. Well, it says while he's trying to go by himself to grieve and mourn and deal with human emotions, the crowds hear of this and they follow him on foot from all their towns. And when he finally disembarks to a place where he thought he was going to be able to be alone, to grieve and to mourn, to cry. He sees the vast crowd, and his heart is moved. This translation says pity is more compassion, moved from his inner being for them. And he stops thinking about himself, and he thinks about them. And it says he cures their sick. And it's really good just to slow that down to realize how long that took. Because you got 5,000 men, and who knows how many women and children. And he says he cured their sick. That's all he was doing this whole time. And when it was evening, so how many hours was he curing their sick? Don't you ever wonder why he just didn't go, "You're all healed in my name"? But he just ministered personally to every single person, and who knows how long it took. We tend to think everything's so magical with Jesus, like he does. And sometimes it is super quick and instant, and he's just, okay, you want to see? See. And then they can see, and we're like, But here he is, curing their sick. He's not preaching, he's not teaching, he's not talking about anything. He's just curing their sick one by one, and one by one, or one family at a time. And when it was evening, that's a long time, huh? Wonder if he got tired. This crowd is with him the whole time. Notice the first crowd, Israel, they can't wait to leave God and to leave Moses and go back to Israel. Why can't we need to go back? It was better in slavery than in the desert. This crowd, so it was all they were thinking about is food, and this crowd, they're not thinking about food at all. They're not grumbling, they're not complaining, they're not even thinking about food. You ever wonder, why didn't they just leave and go get food for themselves? Notice how nobody wanted to leave Jesus. And all he's doing is curing the sick, one person at a time, one family at a time. He's not even talking to them or teaching them. Whatever they're experiencing in his presence there, they didn't want to leave. And they're willing to go hungry to get it. That's amazing. Two different crowds, two different attitudes, and two different experiences of God. Same God, but they experienced him different ways because of their attitude. And here's God again coming to us in the Eucharist at every Mass. Same God as we just read about. Same consistency, same faithfulness, same love, same character. Same God who is our help, who wants to provide for us and who is all and everything. And each one of us will experience him a different way today, depending on our attitude. The second crowd in the gospel, they were hungry physically, but they were more hungry for God spiritually. And so they sat there with him to be fed spiritually, and they ended up getting fed physically as well. How hungry are we for God this morning? However hungry and desperate and needy we are for him this morning, that's how much we're going to get fed by him.